Welcome to Alert Tales, where we dive deep into the most gripping stories of real-life experiences. If you love tales that evoke emotion, spark conversation and connect us all, you're in the right place. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join our community for more captivating stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. I told my stepsister I have feelings for her. She sent the text to our parents. I'm basically kicked out of the family. Where do I begin? I guess some background is necessary. Stepsister and I are both in our 40s. Our parents met and married when we were in our 20s. Both of us are attractive and attracted to each other, but have never said anything to each other or acted on these feelings. Over the years, we've developed a healthy relationship, but there has always been a little bit of sexual tension. We don't see each other very often. Family functions every few months. She is married, I am divorced and have a girlfriend. A few months ago, we were all at a party thrown by my stepsister. She looked beautiful, and I told her so. When the guests had mostly left, and I was sitting at a table with my girlfriend, my stepsister walked over to me, thanked me for being there, took my face in her hands, and gave me a big kiss on the lips. Then, without a word, she walked away out of the room. My girlfriend and I were both shocked. It was a closed-mouth kiss, but it was full of feelings. Since then, I have seen my stepsister twice. Once at a family function where we were both well behaved. The other time was this past weekend. This is where I messed up. We were at a party, but her husband and my girlfriend were not there. I was working at the party. She was a guest. She asked me if she could put her things, coat, purse, with my things, behind where I was standing all night. Of course I said that's fine. Throughout the 3 hours we're there, she squeezed past me to get into her things a few times, and when she did so, she grabbed my butt. She gave me a sly smile and wink each time, which I returned. When the party was over, we hugged and parted ways. But the hug was long, and she told me that she loves me. I told her I love her too. When I got home, I texted her, "I want to make out with you." She kindly said, "You're drunk," and I should have taken that hint to stop. But instead I texted her again and said something pretty steamy and over the line about how much I've lusted over her for 20 years. She told me I was being inappropriate. I agreed and apologized. We said goodnight. In the morning I woke up and immediately texted her again to apologize. I was ashamed and very sorry to put this idiotic mess on her plate. She told me I don't need to keep apologizing. Let's just move forward. I said okay and sincerely appreciated her attitude. Well, I guess she then decided to share the text messages with our parents. They're furious with me and told me I'm no longer welcome at family gatherings, and I'm not to have any kind of relationship at all with my stepsister. She may have shown her husband the texts too. I'm not really clear about that, so that's it. This isn't an iota. I think it's fairly obvious that, yes, I was an asshole. I guess the question is how the F***CP do I move on from this in a healthy way? I'm really struggling to see how this ends in any way other than my complete disappearance. What going back to the way it was really means. This is long. I'm sorry, but I have to write this somewhere. I need to say it to someone. Warning. DV. These past 2 weeks, amidst the terror and anxiety, a story my grandmother told me years ago keeps replaying in my head. My grandmother was a force of nature. I don't say that lightly or to embellish her memory. She just simply was the strongest person, man or woman, I've ever known. This is about her second husband, we'll call him Bill, and all told, they were married just under 20 years. My father and her only child was from her first marriage. That alone is its own tale. When I was 14, she sat me down and told me a story. She said that she needed me to hear it because even though she had survived it and she knew I admired her, the reality of what being strong means if I were to make the wrong choice of a husband kept her up at night. So now, since I was coming to an age where I would be making decisions regarding men and relationships, I needed to know the truth and what I was putting on the line in choosing a man. The first 12 or so years with Bill were actually pretty uneventful. It was never a grand love story, but she didn't mind, and she believed them to be happy enough. Back then, she said marriage was the point, not grand romance, especially for women. My grandmother was beautiful, as well as intelligent. Unfortunately, despite being successful in his profession, Bill was a bit insecure regarding their relationship. But at first it was just little, seemingly inconsequential incidents that she felt she just needed to help him through as a good wife. However, as time went on and she started a business, one that actually became quite successful, combined with the fact that their attempts to have a child together failed, these things seemed over the years to send him deeper into his insecurities. It is important to tell you that Bill's father himself was extremely abusive to his mother. Bill hated him, and they had no relationship because of it. The first half of the marriage, all Bill would talk about in that regard was how horrible his childhood had been and how his mother suffered. Bill was emphatic how he would never be like his father and would never forgive him. All this to say, yes, he had been a bit insecure, but not physically abusive in any way, just in need of reassurance now and then. But as my father grew older, Bill became obsessed with the thought that once he was grown, my grandmother would leave him. Slowly their arguments would result in him calling her names and actively trying to demean her, both professionally and personally. But she thought it was just a difficult stretch after being married for so long. She made excuses, ignored it, blamed herself. Then one day, she said, during a disagreement in the kitchen, Bill turned around and slapped her. She was so stunned, she said she didn't even react. They both just stared at each other in shock. She said she turned and just walked into their bedroom and sat on their bed. She couldn't believe it. He had never. Then Bill walked into their bedroom, dropped to his knees, put his head in her lap and sobbed. He begged her to forgive him. He was so sorry. He couldn't believe he did that. She knew why he hated his father. It would never happen again. He loved her. She knew him. She was his everything. He was near hysterical, crying, gut-wrenching sobs. She had never seen him cry in all of their years together. Then she told me, while staring at me and not at me, that she made the biggest mistake of her life. She forgave him. She believed him, believed he was sorry, absolutely believed he would never do it again, and he didn't. Until almost a year later. Then it happened again, and then again. Pretty soon she said she was in hell, and she didn't tell anyone. She was so ashamed. She would make up stories to friends and family and doctors about how she had accidents over and over again. Then finally, when she couldn't take another day, she filed for divorce, and it was denied. Back then, you had to show just cause for divorce in this country, especially if one party objected, and Bill certainly objected. Sat in court and told the judge how much he loved her and how he had no idea why she wanted to leave him. The judge told my grandmother that he didn't know why she was so cold and unfeeling as to try to divorce a man who obviously loved her so much, even if they had problems after almost 16 years. But as a judge, he wasn't going to allow her to do this to him. And then the judge sent her home. She told me how Bill grabbed her arm outside the courtroom and told her that everyone now could see what a cold bitch she was and what he had to put up with. How he was never going to let her leave him, and she deserved everything that happened to her. So, she better get used to it, be a good wife and stop making him hurt her. So, she said she did the only thing that she could do, try to survive. She had to stay for over 2.5 more years, years that she said almost destroyed her, but this time she didn't lie for him. Every time he beat her, she said so. She told their friends, she told their family, she told the doctors and the police. Mind you, none of these people helped her, stopped him. Not one, but they knew. Then she went back to court almost 3 years later. This time with the money she had managed to hide, because as a woman, she could not have her own bank account, and one of the best attorneys in the state. She did barely manage to get a divorce. Under the extreme physical cruelty clause, it caused a scandal. She lost people who thought she was shameful for airing their dirty laundry in public. People who wondered aloud what she had done to deserve any mistreatment done by him. The only upside to all the fallout was that the publicity caused his family to insist that he return to them. And he left the state so as not to be disinherited. His father came for him. It cost her almost everything, and he had left her barely alive more than once. But she was finally free. Then 1 year later, in 1970, California was the first state in the country to enact no-fault divorce. Read that year again, 1970. When she ended the story, she said that she was telling me so that I would understand. No matter what someone tells you, no matter how they cry or tell you how much they love you, remember two things. No one who actually loves you will call you names or try to make you less. And that I'd better make damn sure that if it ever happened, the first time someone hit me was the last time they did. I promised her, and I, now in my 50s, never broke that promise. I cannot even express what effect she had on my life, how much I loved her. Not one day of my life have I not thought of her all these years later. She died when I was 18, barely over 60. The years of physical trauma had taken its toll on her body, and it simply gave out. I had lost my mother at 10, my father at 13. To say I was devastated to lose her doesn't even begin to describe it. So here I am, writing this because now all I can think about is her, staring at me, telling me that story. She saved me, without question. That talk changed how I looked at relationships. It gave those choices incredible weight, and I can tell you, she saved me from bad situations and people. That look that was and wasn't looking at me has stayed with me all of my life. She is the reason that I have been married to a wonderful man for many, many years. The reason that I chose well. I know that there are people reading this who are survivors or know survivors, are in abusive relationships or know someone who is currently. I am so very sorry. I guess the reason I needed to write this story down is that as bad as it is now, please know it could be so much worse. And that inescapable hell that my grandmother barely survived is exactly what so many men and a disgustingly shameful amount of women want to send us back to. Back to the way it was. And if we don't fight with everything we have, they will.